Hey guys, what's up? It's Natasha and welcome back to this week's video. I know it's been a minute and I do apologize for that, but I'm here to make it up to you. And what better way to do that than talking about books, most especially books that I read in September. September wasn't that great of a month for me, but at least I read something. It wasn't like last year where I barely read a book or anything. Before we get started, if you're excited for this video, please give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to be notified once my videos are uploaded, click the notification button next to the subscribe button. And without any further ado, let's jump into the video. So basically, why September was this drag of a month for me was, I think, mostly because of the first book that I started reading, and it just tipped the scale for the whole month. This book dragged on so much and really put a big speed wobble in my reading plans. Really, I had plans to read about 6 or 7 books and I read 4. So that's great. When I finished it, I was like, this is a 2-star, maybe a 1 for me, because I really did not like this book. And that book would be Afterland by Lauren Beekers. I had so much expectation for this book, mostly because when you read the blurb, it reads something along the lines of, there is this character named Cole, and she is trying to save her son from being sold on the black market because he is part of a handful of guys that survived it wasn't a men apocalypse, but it was like a men pandemic that wiped out almost the whole men population. So his son Miles is basically a survivor of this, and the black market wants him, for sperm donation in the future, for recreation. They want to bring the men back, but she is running away from her sister because her sister is part of this group where she wants to sell Miles to the black market. And this all sounded so intriguing to me. And then it added on and said there's a group of neon nuns chasing after them because they know the secret as well. The only adrenaline that occurred was in the beginning of the book, somewhere, I wouldn't even say 3/4, a quarter of a way into the book, and then at the end of the book. That was the most action-packed this book was. You would think that if her sister was chasing her, she would be on her trail constantly, like hot on her trail constantly. And 3/4 of this book was just her sister. What was her sister's name? Billy. It was just her sister on another side of America, and she is on the other side of America, and they don't even overlap. There's this close call where they overlap, or they get close to one another, and then it just dissipates. The group of neon nuns, I'm sorry if this is a spoiler to you, they are actually a safe haven for Cole and Miles, or Mila. They do nothing. They don't even mention anything about Miles being a boy. They have no recollection about him being a boy. They don't even know he's a guy or a boy. Maybe it was just the way I interpreted everything, but I think most of all, it was just the fact that there was no action in the middle of this book. This book I started at the end of August, and I was quite excited for it because the first chapter was so gripping, and then by the end of September, I was like, I need to finish this book because I normally don't DNF books. So I really wanted to finish this book, and it was just a big letdown. That's my personal experience with this book. I would not recommend it to anyone else. So the next 3 books that I read were actually 4 stars, 5 stars. If I could give some of them higher stars, I would. But the first one I read was After the Rain by Natalia Gomez. This book is about 2 people that survived the Leicester Square bombing, I believe in 2014 or 2015. And the book handles about how people react to trauma differently. Say, for example, our first character, whose name's Alice, she doesn't have any physical injuries except for the fact that her back hurt when she got caught up in the bombing. She just had a large incision in her back, and that was basically that. Her trauma was mostly due to the fact that she couldn't be around people anymore without thinking of that bombing, and she had panic attacks. She didn't want to be close to people. She became this real insecure person who didn't want to talk about anyone or anything about the bombing. And then we get Jack. He's this adventurous guy. He's an adrenaline junkie basically, and then he gets into the bombing and he loses both of his legs, and his trauma stems from the fact that physical appearances count for him. And how is he supposed to run the next marathon that is taking place in about 6 months without his legs? And he doesn't want to talk to his parents about it. Somewhere along the line, he shuts everyone out, even Alice, after they became very good friends. And you just follow the two characters' processes of how they deal with their different traumas. And, it opens your eyes up to the different traumas people have in bombings, in robberies, situations like that. So it was really a good story. I definitely recommend it. There's no romance or anything. There's a possibility that there's romance involved, but that never evolves. These two just stay friends. And it's almost an open interpretation, the ending. You can either think they will end up together, most likely they will end up together, but this is open for your own interpretation. The book basically just focuses on how people deal with their trauma on different levels and the types of trauma that they have. My voice just disappeared. Okay. So definitely a 4 out of 5. Let's move on to the next book. Because September was Heritage Month and me being a South African, I decided to read books that were from South Africa. That is also why I read Lauren Beerker's. I also wanted to read 2 of her other books, but because Afterland dragged so long, I just didn't have the energy to read more. But I read 13 Hours and Blood Safari by Dion Meyer. Both were from Dion Meyer. And can I just say, for those of you who want South African stories and you want to get to know, ways around South Africa, Dion Meyer is the best one to go. I would give both of these stories 4 out of 5. I bought another book of his the other day and I'm just so excited to read it. 13 Hours is about 2 American girls who come, they on this, I don't know what you call it. It's like a Kontiki tour. So basically you travel all the way from Europe down to South Africa, but by bus and that. So you go through every country in South Africa. And one of the girls, I believe her name is Rachel, sees something that she's not supposed to see. And once they come in South Africa, they are confronted by some very sketchy people and her best friend is killed. It was a very confusing start to the book, especially if you don't know what is happening. They just talk about this random person coming out of his house and yelling at the people, what are you doing in front of my house, while Rachel is behind a bush. And then when she comes out, he yells at her for getting to get away from his yard, and it's just so much chaos. It was the first chapter altogether. I think there were 3 point of views, so naturally listening to this on audiobook confused the hell out of me, but eventually I got into it. But basically this follows Rachel as she is trying to escape these guys that are trying to hunt her down. And then we get introduced to Captain Benny Grissel. He is tasked in finding her, and he only has 13 hours to find her before South Africa's integrity just falls to pieces. It was just a splendid book. It's got another case intertwined actually in Rachel's case. This was a real good murder mystery, and which I didn't solve at all, so I'm thinking of giving up my night job. I am no longer a detective when I watch crime shows. I will leave it to the professionals. And I would definitely reread this book and buy this book for my collection because it definitely deserves to be on one of my shelves. The last book that I read by Dion Meyer, and also the last book that I read for September, was Blood Safari. This book follows a woman, I honestly can't remember her name, but she is being hunted by people after she called the police and said she believes she has seen her brother on one of their wanted posters. But the problem is her brother has been dead for about 20 years. And after she called the sergeant in the police, these people come and they try and kill her. And she hires a bodyguard. His name's Lemma. And he is tasked in protecting her and, while she's trying to find out if this man is really her brother or if it's someone else entirely. We follow them through Mpumalanga and the outskirts and how they try and piece together where this woman's brother is and if he is still alive. There are so many hints that he is still alive, but there's also so many hints that he's not. So I was very conflicted about the story the whole time. All Dion Meyer's books are just so action-packed and I really enjoyed every single piece of it. And I would definitely recommend any of his other books. But those are all the books that I read in September. I am deeply sorry about the rant that I gave you about Afterland, but that's just my subjective opinion about the book. I really didn't enjoy it. Would not recommend it. If you enjoyed this video, comment down below which books you read in September. I know it's almost the end of August, but it's fine. Better late than never. And I will see you guys in the next video next week. Bye!